I sat by the wide glass window of my apartment, the city skyline stretching endlessly before me, lights flickering like tiny reminders of dreams I'd chased and claimed. The soft brush of silk against my arm was the only sensation keeping me grounded as I scrolled through emails on my laptop, but it was my phone that finally demanded my attention. Buzzing insistently, it flashed my brother's name. My chest tightened. I hadn't spoken to Michael in months, not since the chaos of his wedding, or rather, the disaster masquerading as one. My brother, always so trusting, had handed over everything, our inheritance, our family's legacy, to a woman he barely knew. And she was gone. Vanished before they even returned from their honeymoon. A sigh escaped me as I put down the phone, the city sounds muffled behind the double panes. I remembered warning him, shaking my head at his blind devotion, but my words had floated in the air like smoke, ignored unheeded. Now, everyone assumed I'd be bitter, resentful, a sister left on the sidelines. What they didn't know was how much I'd grown. How quietly I'd built a life strong enough to survive anything. My eyes traced the lines of the apartment, the subtle art on the walls, the small victories hidden in plain sight. Pride warmed me in the same breath as sorrow, a strange mixture that always lingered in moments like this. I touched the pendant at my throat, a gift from Mom, a reminder of resilience. And as I finally tapped the screen to answer the call, I knew one thing. Whatever came next, I was ready. I remember that summer like it was yesterday. The sunlight poured through the kitchen windows of our family home, glinting off the polished countertops where I nervously paced. I was younger then, just 22, full of dreams but painfully aware of how invisible I often felt in my own family. My brother Michael had announced he was engaged to a woman I barely knew, a woman who flashed charm like a weapon and whose every smile seemed calculated. I tried to warn him, voice trembling but urgent. Michael, you don't know her like you think you do. Be careful, I said, gripping the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles went white. He laughed it off, that confident, infuriating laugh that always made me feel small. Jess, you're overthinking. She's perfect. You'll see. But I could see. I always saw. And I wasn't wrong. The bride, radiant and poised, moved through our lives like a storm wrapped in silk, taking what she wanted without question. She charmed our parents, charmed our friends, and most tragically, charmed my brother into giving her everything. My heart had a hollow ache that day. I remembered the lump in my throat as I watched him sign papers, giving her full access to our inheritance. My hands shook, my chest tight, and I wanted to scream, not at her, but at him. How could he be so blind? It was then that Grandma's words came back to me, whispered as she smoothed my hair during a tearful phone call. Jessica, never let anyone make you smaller than you are. Stand tall, even when it feels impossible. One day, the world will see your worth. I held on to those words like a lifeline. That afternoon, I packed a small bag and walked out of the kitchen, past the laughter and clinking glasses, past the illusions of family harmony. I didn't know where I was going or how I'd survive, but I knew I couldn't stay where my voice was ignored, where my instincts were dismissed, and where my strength was underestimated. For the first time, I felt a spark of resolve. Whatever came next, I would stand alone if I had to, and I would build a life that no one could ever take away. Leaving home was terrifying, but it was also liberating. I moved into a modest apartment in downtown Chicago, a small space with creaking floors and a view of the bustling streets below. Every sound, from the rumble of buses to the chatter of pedestrians, reminded me that the world didn't care about my family's drama. It only cared about what I could build for myself. And so I began. I started small, freelance writing gigs, odd marketing projects, anything that paid rent. Nights were long, and doubt was a constant companion. There were days I questioned my choices, wondered if I'd made a mistake leaving home, leaving Michael to his blind trust in someone who didn't deserve it. But I kept my grandmother's words close, her wisdom like a shield. Stand tall, even when it feels impossible. It wasn't easy. I learned to navigate office politics, to pitch myself when every instinct screamed to hide, to face clients who underestimated me because of my age or gender. I struggled with imposter syndrome, the silent fear that I wasn't good enough, that one mistake would erase every tiny victory. But slowly I began to win. My first big break came when a seasoned mentor, a woman named Claudia, recognized my potential. Claudia had a reputation for spotting talent and nurturing it. "Jessica," she said one afternoon over coffee in a crowded cafe, "you have something most people don't, tenacity. Stick with me, and I'll show you how to turn that into power." Her belief in me ignited a fire I didn't know I had. With Claudia's guidance, I started taking bigger risks, landing clients, negotiating contracts, learning the business side of things with a relentless hunger. There were sleepless nights and missed dinners, and yet every small win, the first profitable campaign, the first major client, the first month I could pay rent without worry, felt like a victory not just for my bank account, but for my self-respect. All the while, I kept my success quiet. Family didn't need to know how far I'd come. Michael could continue to make his mistakes. The world could underestimate me. I didn't care. My life was mine, and I was building it on my terms. Over the years, I transformed my modest freelance gigs into a small consulting agency. My office, once a corner desk in a shared space, became my own space filled with books, elegant art, and little reminders of the journey, moments that whispered, "You did it. You're stronger than you knew." I would occasionally catch myself imagining Michael realizing the truth, that the sister he dismissed, the one he thought would fade into obscurity, had created a life filled with wealth, respect, and independence. But I didn't dwell on that. My focus was on growth, on learning, on thriving. By the time the news of his runaway bride reached me again, I wasn't the frightened, overlooked sister of years past. I was a woman who had carved her own destiny. And now, finally, the world, including my family, would have to take notice. The knock on my office door was hesitant, polite, almost uncertain. I glanced up from the stack of proposals on my desk, adjusting the edge of my silk blouse, and saw my brother, Michael, standing there with that familiar mix of guilt and disbelief etched across his face. Behind him, a few family members shuffled, eyes wide, whispers barely contained. I gestured to the chairs with a small, calm smile. "Sit," I said. My voice was steady, measured, controlled in a way I'd learned over the years. I could see the confusion in their eyes. They expected something small, timid, a sister barely holding her life together. What they didn't know was that this woman, the one they'd overlooked, was nothing like the girl they remembered. The office spoke before I did. Polished wooden floors reflected the warm glow of modern lamps, paintings I'd collected over the years lined the walls, and shelves overflowed with books, awards, and little reminders of the victories that had been hard-earned. My desk, neat and commanding, had a sleek laptop, a crystal paperweight, and a family photo tucked in the corner. But it was a photo from years ago, a reminder that even when they dismissed me, I had never stopped being aware, never stopped planning. Michael's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. "No, don't say anything yet. Take it in. Really see it." Their gazes roamed the room, lingering on the subtle signs of success. The modern office chair I had saved for months to afford, the framed articles I'd been featured in, the awards for campaigns that had changed companies' fortunes. I let them absorb every detail. Let them sit in the quiet realization that the girl they thought powerless had not only survived but thrived beyond their expectations. Finally, I leaned back in my chair, fingertips pressed lightly together. "Michael," I said, voice calm but firm, "do you remember how you handed everything over? The inheritance, the house, the trust, everything to her? And do you remember how quickly she disappeared before the honeymoon even began?" He swallowed hard, eyes darting to the floor. Nods and murmurs passed through the family behind him. "Well," I continued, letting a small smile tug at the corner of my lips, "while you were busy losing yourself in someone else, I was building my life. My company, my independence, my security. I've done it all without asking for help, without taking what wasn't mine." I gestured lightly toward the plaques on the wall and the portfolio on the desk. This is what I've built. This is who I've become. For a moment, silence ruled. I watched the disbelief wash over Michael, shock, guilt, all mingled in his expression. The sister he had thought powerless, the one he ignored, had quietly become the most capable, strongest member of our family. I felt a quiet satisfaction, not from revenge, but from proof that resilience, intelligence, and determination can quietly, insistently carve their own path. I had no need to gloat. The truth, visible and undeniable, spoke louder than any words. And as they stood there, taking it all in, I realized how much power there is in simply showing up fully as yourself. No explanations needed. No apologies required. Just the undeniable force of who you've become. The room was thick with tension, but this time, it was mine to control. Michael shifted nervously, clearly aware that the sister he had underestimated for years now held the upper hand. I leaned forward slightly, hands resting on the polished desk, feeling the weight of years of struggle, triumph, and quiet resilience behind every word I was about to say. "Michael," I began, my tone calm but uncompromising, "I can help you rebuild, but things will be different now. I will not stand by if old mistakes are repeated." I let my gaze sweep across the faces of my family, watching the mixture of guilt, shame, and curiosity reflected back at me. "First," I continued, "you need to take responsibility for your choices. Blind trust isn't loyalty, it's negligence. You gave her everything without truly knowing her. That has to stop. You will make amends where you can, and you will learn to protect what's important to you, without expecting someone else to do it for you." Michael's eyes widened, a flicker of understanding in them. I let that moment linger. Then I addressed my parents and the rest of the family. "As for all of you," I said, "it's time to stop overlooking the people right in front of you. Respect isn't optional. Support, encouragement, and acknowledgement, these are the minimum now. Old habits of favoritism, judgment, or dismissiveness end today." I paused, letting each word land. I will support those who are willing to grow, who are willing to face themselves honestly. But I will not bend to old patterns or excuses. No more taking shortcuts or assuming someone else will clean up mistakes. If you want my help, if you want me involved, these are the conditions: accountability, growth, and respect. Everything else follows naturally. I saw the shift in their expressions, the hesitant nods, the small movements of recognition. They realized I wasn't punishing them out of spite. I was offering a chance for real change, a path forward built on integrity, responsibility, and mutual respect. The power dynamic had flipped entirely. Where once I had been the overlooked sister, now I was the guide, the anchor, the one setting the rules. And yet, even in this authority, there was compassion. I wasn't cold. I wasn't cruel. I was firm because I had learned that true strength comes from balance, understanding when to enforce boundaries and when to offer a hand. Finally, I leaned back, satisfied. "We can rebuild this family," I said softly, "but only if we do it differently. Only if we do it right." Michael met my eyes, and for the first time in years, I saw a spark of respect there, mixed with regret, yes, but also recognition. He understood that I wasn't the sister to dismiss, not anymore. And for the first time, I felt completely in control, not just of the situation, but of the story of my life. I had turned pain, neglect, and disappointment into power, and now, for the first time, those I loved, or at least still wanted in my life, had to meet me on my terms. Weeks passed, and change, slow but steady, began to ripple through my family. Michael started taking responsibility in ways he never had before. He sought advice, asked questions, and even began rebuilding some of what he had lost, not just materially, but emotionally. I watched from my office, a quiet pride settling in my chest. He was learning, growing, and finally seeing the consequences of his actions. My parents, too, shifted. The subtle favoritism that had once defined our family gatherings began to fade. They asked for my opinion, listened attentively, and acknowledged accomplishments without overshadowing or dismissing anyone. It was not perfect. Old habits die hard, but it was a start. And I I felt lighter, freed. For years, I carried the frustration of being ignored, dismissed, and underestimated. Now, I could finally let that go. I looked around my office, at the books lining the shelves, the awards I'd earned, the small mementos of resilience and triumph. My grandmother's pendant rested on my desk, catching the afternoon sun. I touched it, smiling softly. Stand tall, her words echoed in my mind. I had. And I always would. I reflected on the journey, on leaving home, enduring sleepless nights, facing rejection and doubt, and quietly building a life that no one could take from me. I had grown into a woman who could meet the world on her own terms, who could wield power with both firmness and compassion. The best part? I could now engage with my family without fear or resentment. I could be present, helpful, and supportive, yet remain fully myself. No one could diminish me again. Not Michael, not anyone else. I had learned to protect my boundaries, trust my instincts, and honor my worth. Sitting at my desk, looking out at the city lights that once seemed intimidating and now felt like a personal backdrop to my life, I felt a profound sense of peace. I had turned pain into strength, betrayal into wisdom, and neglect into empowerment. And as I leaned back in my chair, the city humming softly below, I whispered to myself, a final affirmation, a voiceover I would carry in every corner of my life. I am enough. I am strong. I am unstoppable.